important that, okay, if you're going to listen to someone, I think it's important if some of these Muslim speakers are scholars who studied in the Hawza, and some of them
And
are
seminary, yeah.
seminary, and some of them are. No, between someone who's studying in the Hawza and someone who hasn't, which one makes more sense to listen to?
I would always listen to someone, a scholar who studied from the seminary, Islamic seminary, and got that knowledge from a bigger grand scholar, rather than listening to someone who just read 2 books and had the desire of sitting on the pulpit and reciting. Personally, my personal experience since my childhood, that I have been listening to lady speakers, I have heard so many wrong masahibs, so many wrong traditions of Holy Prophet, and so many wrong things about it, that I have personally, after learning Islam, I said, I'm not going to listen to that person unless and until I'm going to ask the person, have you studied from the seminary? Because I have been getting misguided, wrong information so much myself. I was like, I don't want to listen to anyone but a scholar.
Yeah. It makes more sense to listen to someone who actually studied a topic, like when they're actually spent some chunk of their life
because
studying
they're experts, yeah.
They spent a lot of time and energy learning about Islam, and it's important to understand, like, Hawza in itself. Once a person enters a seminary and goes to Hawza, they're not. When you first arrive in the first set of years, you're not necessarily studying Islam. You're more focusing on the tools to learn about Islam.
Yes.
That's what Hawza does. So it gives you Islamic
A foundation.
A foundation.
Yeah.
So, for example, Arabic grammar, sarf and nahw,
Yes.
aqaid, beliefs, mantiq, logic.
Fiqh.
Usul, fiqh,
Islamic
all these
laws.
things, these are foundational things.
Yeah.
Philosophy, falsafa, all these things are foundational things. And if you don't know these things and you're going into the books of hadith, you won't necessarily understand them correctly. And I've seen this myself because, like, I spent a lot of time before coming to the Hawza studying about Islam. I spent hours and hours just studying on my own. And now that I've been through it, the seminary, my understanding has completely changed.
Yes.
And it's because you don't have that foundation if you don't go to Hawza. So it's really important. And so, as you were saying, sometimes I've seen speakers who haven't been to the Hawza, and they'll say not necessarily correct things sometimes.
No.
And I don't mean, and a lot of times they don't mean to.
They don't mean to be wrong.
They don't mean to be wrong,
Yeah,
but they misunderstand things.
Misunderstands, yeah.
Unfortunately, that happens, and I've seen it too. And when I've been going through my Hawza classes, and I realized, oh wow, that person said this and that was wrong. Like, my teacher just said this.
Exactly.
And so I see it within what I'm studying in the seminary. I was just like, oh. And even in those Hawza, as you grow,
But I would even like to come to a point that there are people who do not go to seminary at all, who just pick up like 2 books of, they learn something about masahibs, something that makes you cry. People like about Bibi Sakina and all those traditions which they eat masahib at the end of the majlis when you read Maddahi. So that's the one. They were wrong traditions that was expressed. I have heard about Bibi Fatima Zahra, Bibi Sakina, Salamullah Alaiha, totally wrong. And when I went to that person asking them, have you studied from any Hawza? The person said, no. Seminary, the person said,
Maddahi usually
no.
they don't study.
No,
at the
not
Hawza.
Maddahi. Just give an example of the last tradition. Everyone have their own different ways, right? And then where did you get this from? I got it from Google. The person is a speaker, and the person is saying, okay, then the point comes, like my open thought, that to express, freedom of expressions. Why did you appoint that person to sit on the pulpit, giving a lecture for so many majlis for you, for this entire thing, because the person is giving knowledge and there are people who are believing in that knowledge. And on the day of judgment, you will be responsible that you did not investigate before pointing her to speak from the pulpit, because what she's speaking is totally wrong. So the answer that I got was like, we don't care. All we care is like the more she makes people cry, the more we are happy. We just want audiences. And this is the very bitter truth of the centers, because I have been dealing with a lot of centers and all. When I go out and talk to the sponsors and all, they say we want the people who shout or make people cry or something, but they don't understand if the person doesn't have any knowledge, the person is not from the seminary, not even 6 months, you're just exploiting the pulpit.
Yeah.
This is a very bad issue going on, and the person is speaking is wrong.
Yeah, unfortunately we have that. Shahid Mutahari, may Allah bless his soul, like, he has a full book about this, where people would make up stories about the Ahlul Bayt on the day of Ashura just to make people cry, and you're lying about the story, and it's not okay. Like, just because the means don't justify the ends. Just because you want people to cry doesn't mean that you can do anything you want. You can't make up
distorted hadees on the day of Ashura, right?
Yeah.
Of Ashura. I've read that book.
Hamaseh Hosseini, that's the
Yes,
part.
and
that's
it
what
was so interesting. So many things.
and he's so angry. Like, when you read that book,
He's
he's
upset.
so angry. He's so upset. He's like, what is this? Like, why are they doing this? And you can tell, you can sense the passion that he had and the way he was so upset. And it's not okay. It's definitely not okay.
When I was at the seminary and I was studying this book, I was given to do a essay on this book, read, and the teacher said you have to do it. When I was reading this book, I was so surprised. Since my childhood, I have been listening to so many hadees that I believed to be true that came out to be totally false. Oh my gosh. And I was like, look how many wrong things this zakir, this speaker, who do not go to the hawza, the audiences, who are actually listening to us, they should be very much alert on that and understand this point that if you want to, even in your house of 50 people, if you want to invite any speaker, please at least ask how many years of education you have done, who was your teacher, in which seminary. And I know every houses during Muharram and Safar, if there are so many houses, 1,000 houses has 2,000 houses. At the same time, maybe they have a majlis going on of Imam Hussain, the martyrdom, people explaining. So they are not going to get 1,000 speakers to speak. That's why they say we don't have, okay, that person can speak about at least, I don't know what making the people cry, what you say as Masaib. But if you really want to talk about Islam, appoint a scholar or at least someone who has studied from the Hawza.
I mean, it's fine. Like, in these, I know in small towns, like sometimes there's just no scholar. There's no one there who studied Hawza. Like, we don't have, unfortunately, it's a huge issue right now, is that we don't have enough mubaligh. Now, at least with
speakers,
men, well, with men it's a little bit better. With women, it's almost, we barely have any.
We barely have any.
And it's unfortunate, it's a problem. Like, we don't have enough women in the seminary, especially not from the West. And unfortunately, most of the families that do come here, the wife is not studying. And unfortunately, from what I've seen is that the men don't understand there's a need for it.
Yes, there is.
While I remember there was this one scholar, if I mention his name, everyone will know who he is. And he came to our school and he said that, or Jose, and he said that the same way we need nurses, women nurses, we need women scholars. And he said that. And I remember before coming to Hawza, I would ask brothers who studied in the Hawza, like, is it wajib kifai? Like, is it wajib for women mandatory for women to come if they have the ability to? And they would say no. But then I came here and then they were like, no, it's necessary. It's wajib.
It's mandatory.
It's mandatory
because of lack of women scholars in this society.
It's important. Like, it's unfortunate that when we have. But sisters have to go to brothers when they have a problem. Like, even me right now, most of my teachers are men. There's not that many teachers that are females, even within the...
Encourage many lady speakers to come to the seminary, study Islam, go out in the society and speak out. Because not everyone is a speaker. Most of the people who graduate, very few are speaker. Because speaking is a skill. Not everyone can speak out,
You mean scholars?
Yeah, no, anyone. There are thousands of scholars that are graduating out, Not everyone is a speaker. It's an art. It's something that has been given to that person by God.
It's an art. They have to practice.
Definitely, it is. So we need more lady speakers. And we were even talking about that.
Lady scholars.
Not only lady scholars. Whoever is sitting and doing the majlis of Imam Hussain, please at least ask them how many years of education you took from the seminary. What have you been studying? Who's your teacher? Please just don't let any popular person who's just making you cry or yelling out, make themselves on the pulpit and call them a scholar. I would like to say one thing, I'm very sorry to say, but when I was in India, what do you mean by akhund? It's a Farsi word. What do you mean by akhund?
In Farsi, it just means someone who wears the
it means a scholar, right?
Not necessarily. Sometimes when they say akhund, it has typically a negative connotation. So it just means someone with the cloak.
With the cloak who's giving speeches, right?
Typically.
Yeah, someone.
But it has a negative connotation here, usually.
Anyway, so someone who's giving a speech, not even from the Hawza, is giving the title of ahun, that is a scholar, you know. So that was so surprising. And I asked the question, why do you call that lady a scholar? You know, I've studied few years in the seminary. I'm not a scholar. I don't even call myself as ahun, right? And that lady is speaking just by reading 2 books. You're calling the person.
You guys call them ahun because
No,
here it's
I
only
don't.
men.
I don't.
They usually only call men ahun.
Yeah, but the ladies also sometimes in India, the
call
Iranians
them.
who reside call a lady speaker as ahun, you know, but that person have never studied from the seminary and getting the big title. So it is surprising the people, they don't understand. You know, when you try to give them knowledge, you cannot call the person as ahun because the person is not from the seminary. Ahun has a different meaning. You can call the person a speaker, a zakir, you know, a zakira, something like that, but not, I don't understand. So